He doesn't know what's happening. He goes into this little building. He sees two guys in black pajamas shooting at him. Boom, boom, kills them both. He killed everybody who set up the ambush of their convoy. So it's like, who is this guy? Well, he's CIA. But like at the time, it's hard to piece this stuff together, you know?
Welcome to Friends with Davey, y'all. We are here in Austin, Texas at the Comedy Frequency Studios with a couple of extremely special guests, two very good friends of mine. Jeremy Jonas is with us, owner of the Black Rabbit Comedy Club here in Austin, Texas. I mean, y'all are doing crazy shit in town. Sir. It's wild, dude. Yeah, like fun. Some of the people that you have coming through, absolutely incredible. Yeah. Theo Vaughn's been here, Matt McCusker.
Yep.
Has Gillis stopped in yet?
He's been to the podcast studio, right?
No, not yet.
He hasn't? No. I haven't seen him. I've never met him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you know.
Anyway,
someday.
Mark Norman was here the other day.
Norman was here?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just talked about Mark Norman a little bit on another podcast. Yeah. About the time I almost unalived him.
Oh.
Yeah.
How nice.
We don't need to get into that. But also with us in studio is producer Josh Kabaza.
Hey.
What's up, dude? Are you going to give yourself a round of applause or something?
No, I gave myself some horns.
Oh, okay. Horns. All right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
The second time was way better than
I
the
should have
first
put
time.
the headphones
you
on,
put the
dude.
intro.
What was wrong with my first intro?
It wasn't good. That's why we did the second intro.
It was
a lot
good.
better.
It just wasn't accurate.
There you go.
And it wasn't my fault either.
Yeah.
Honestly, this whole place is really
It's
confusing.
confusing.
We're down in this weird basement. Not even weird, actually. It's a very cool basement. Y'all should come check it out for sure. Black Rabbit Comedy Club and Comedy Frequency Studios.
Mm-hmm. It's Comedy Frequency Studios and Black Rabbit Comedy Club.
So. Comedy Frequency comes first?
Because we're in here. If you walk 5 feet that way, it's Black Rabbit and Comedy Frequency.
Correct.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of really cool comedy stuff going on, Jeremy. But that's not even what I want to talk about, dude.
Okay.
Because, I mean, yes, you are a stand-up comedian. We've produced shows together.
Yeah.
You're incredibly good at what you do. But what a lot of people don't know, I think people have an idea that you're a very intriguing individual.
Okay.
But you wouldn't, like, based on your comedy, you talk about being a doctor a little bit.
Yeah.
You talk about having been in the military.
Sure.
But people don't understand the lore there. And that's really what I want to talk about is Jeremy Jonas's lore. Because you've done a lot. You went to West Point.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? You went to Harvard at one point too, right?
Yeah. I was a clinical instructor.
At Harvard.
Yeah.
Insane. And then you also spent some time in the intelligence community.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a special operations unit, so I had TS SCI clearance with like special categories. So I was in that realm, I guess, for a while. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there was some sketchy stuff that went on while you were overseas.
Stuff, yeah.
Also, maybe one of the most interesting things, Josh, I don't know if you know this, but Jeremy is actually in an interracial relationship as well.
That's the most interesting thing to
Well, actually,
let's get into that.
She's his handler, so that's how it works when you're in the intelligence.
Oh,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Josh knows more about this than I did. I didn't realize that your wife.
We're going to have to erase all of this. Are we done?
Is it over? No, but let's talk a little bit. How did you end up getting into West Point? Like, what's that process like?
I'm going to be completely honest. My dad said when I was probably like 14 that when you're 18, you're out of the house. We're not paying for college. And so that was a lot of thing. And to be honest with you, I didn't even apply to West. My mom did everything. I was just like, she wrote the essay. I mean, because my family was like really strict or like really disciplined. You know, my dad made us run every day. Even after I stopped running track, he made me run every day. I was playing football, running, 5 or 6 miles a day. It was crazy. Yeah. And so our whole family was set up in a way. And by the way, like my older brother was already at West Point. My sister had gone to the Naval Academy. My 2 younger siblings went to West Point. So it was kind of like, it was like part of the formula.
Wait,
like,
did any of your siblings not go to a military academy? Holy shit,
all
dude.
went, yeah.
That's crazy.
I think that's why we get along, because you were also in a cult.
That's true. That's so true. And you were in a military cult, essentially. What
Pretty much.
Was your dad a former service member? Or?
Vietnam.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he did Vietnam. And it's crazy because he never talked about it. And years later, I was trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. And he was like, I was like, did you ever think about staying in? He's like, hell no. I got out as soon as I could. That place is terrible. You know, like, okay.
Well, I mean, having the Vietnam experience. Yeah. I mean, dude, that was.
Yeah. Yeah. He went straight over as a forward observer, and had his full experience there, and then got out.
Well, yeah, and not just the experience of being in Vietnam, but also I think that was probably the first war where the troops weren't heroes.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. And he talked. I mean, he said he'd come back. People spit on him in the airport, and he was just like, "I'm going to kill this person," because I could have, you know, like a week ago in the jungle. Yeah.
That's actually I mean, I obviously I was never in the military, so I don't really have firsthand experience. But a lot of my buddies, when they say they've come back from a deployment, like the mindset, the mentality at that point is just like, oh, if you fuck with me, I'm gonna murder you.
Yeah, you can.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, and my deployments were never really like that because I was more doing like security for a general. So it wasn't like I can just go out and, you know, legally murder somebody. But
pretty cool. Pretty cool.
You can still do it illegally.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I just wasn't as familiar with it. You know?
There's a few people in Austin I could do that to, honestly. Mostly homeless, but you know.
But that's not. You want me to erase that too?
It is pretty wild that your whole life, you know, it's like they're told that, you know, you shall not kill.
Right.
And then one day it's like, no, you can join the army and totally legally kill.
Yeah.
It's totally legit. And they're like, did you check this out with God? You know, it's like, yeah, he's cool with it. Like, just sign here.
No. It's fine if you're doing it in a combat situation.
Right.
That's okay.
This is for America.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's not what the Mormons say. The Mormons still say you're going to hell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because they're pacifists, right?
I have
Same thing with like the Quakers and
I've
stuff.
met a couple Mormons in the military.
Yeah.
They're good soldiers.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Obedient.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I never really thought about a Mormon as a troop.
Yeah, well, you know, generally there's all kinds of different people. It's like kind of you get cops that become a cop because they want to exert control and violence, you know, and then you get people who want to serve, you know, so.
But the Mormons, like, I mean, were they like the cooks, the doctors maybe?
No, I had
medics?
one of my good buddies, Mormon infantry guy, went to Ranger school together.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because people, you know, they have a lot of faith in the U.S. of America, you know?
Sure.
So they generally think they're doing a good thing, and so.
That's interesting. I could not picture any of my Mormon buddies like out there just blowing dudes away.
Well, you just don't know.
Blowing dudes maybe, but not away.
Yeah, you just don't know what you're going to end up doing, you know, that's the whole thing.
But I mean, going to Ranger school as a Mormon, I mean, you know you're going to, you know, be out there smoking bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the training's for, basically. Sure. Yeah, small unit tactics.
So. Did you ever kill a person?
No. I mean, not in the military.
Okay. Those dead blue eyes are scaring me right now, Jeremy. So you ended up at West Point.
Yeah.
I mean, you go through the regular 4-year program there, I'm assuming. Did you play sports or anything while you were there?
I played lacrosse, but I got kicked off the team.
For what?
They forgot, because I walked onto the team, so they didn't do the NCAA stuff. So they had to forfeit all the games I played in. And so,
really?
Yeah, so they kicked me off at the end. They're like, we have to forfeit all the games. And I was like, okay. And then I just didn't go back.
So you were responsible for a complete losing record?
Yeah.
For the West Point lacrosse team?
For 1 year. Yeah.
Wow.
I played in like...
That's kind of cool, actually.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to brag, but...
Are there wild parties and stuff at West Point?
Well, by wild, if you mean like a bunch of dudes packed into a hotel room watching that kind of party. Yeah.
Oh, nice, dude. Well, females go to West Point too, though, right?
Yeah, it was like 10% female.
10%?
Yeah.
Oh, so they must have been in high demand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Were there any like attractive female West
There's
Pointers?
some. Yeah, there's some. I mean, because they're generally fit, you know.
That's good.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple butterfaces, probably.
I mean, sure, just like, you know, anywhere else.
Just regular society, right? It's just a microcosm of regular society, except
Pretty
you're all
much.
trained killers at this point.
Well, you know, not that trained at West Point. You don't kill a lot at West Point. You know, it's a lot of marching and drilling. Shooting. Well, yeah, some explosives, but yeah.
Okay.
Just normal stuff.
What was your degree in from West Point?
Electrical engineering.
Oh, nice, dude.
Computer science, electrical engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you graduate from West Point. I mean, was it an overall good experience? I mean, like good school?
I mean, my big thing at West Point was there's so many opportunities to do stuff. Like I went to this dive school, and that was kind of like probably the hardest thing I did at West Point. I ended up like blacking out underwater 3 different times to get through the school, and so that kind of stuff you couldn't really do anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then you get out, and when you get in the regular Army, a lot of people look and they'll see like the badges and stuff you have, and they're like, "Oh, you went to West Point. You know, you were able to do that kind of stuff," which is true. It's cool.
It is cool. There also seems to be like a little bit of a mentality, like you know, the enlisted men see a West Point grad and they're like, "Oh, this guy's a pussy."
Yeah, maybe sometimes. I mean, I think maybe the perception sometimes is that a lot of the stuff gets handed to them. Like, so for example, if you're in a regular infantry unit, it's hard to get a spot to go to Ranger School.
Okay.
But if you're just an officer in general, if you're an infantry officer, you automatically get a spot to Ranger School because they want you to do it and then go to your unit and then train everybody.
Gotcha.
And so there's a little bit of that, like, oh, you got the opportunity to do this and I didn't, you know, but...
Maybe a little jealousy?
Yeah, maybe a little. There's a little professional jealousy.
Okay.
But I think generally, too, people kind of feel like, oh, you know, he went to West Point, he's probably squared away.
Yeah.
And then if you're not, then it's like, well, then you're a huge piece of trash. Okay. You know what I mean? So it's like one or the other.
If you're not being taken care of coming out of West Point, then you're probably worthless?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, like if you show up to your unit and you don't have a Ranger tab and you're like a West Point infantry guy, then you're pretty much garbage.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You should just be a logistics person at that point, probably.
Right. Nobody wants you in charge of a platoon.
Got it.
Which is crazy because I knew a guy like that. And after 9/11, so nobody wanted him as a PL, as a platoon leader. So they kicked him up to like division. So 9/11 happened. And so they started sending all these tasks out. They needed more bodies to go to Afghanistan. He goes to Afghanistan. This is crazy. He's on a convoy. It gets hit. So basically, he's just like in a command center, and these SF and ODA team, like Special Forces guy, they saw him every day, and they're like, hey, you want to come on patrol with us? So he started going on patrol. Their convoy gets hit, dust everywhere. They start reacting to contact. He hasn't done battle drills with him. He doesn't know what to do. He goes the wrong way. Oh. So he gets separated from them. So then he doesn't know what's happening. He goes into this little building. He sees 2 guys in black pajamas shooting at him. Boom, boom, kills them both. Goes to the next building, boom, boom, kills 2 more guys. He killed everybody who set up the ambush of their convoy.
No way.
By accident?
Just by getting lost.
Yeah, he basically, the dust, dust was up, everybody moved. He didn't know where people were. He thought they went this way, he went that way, and he ended up flanking their position, killed everybody in the building. So this guy comes back. We go to eat in Buca de Beppo's, right? This like cheesy like Italian chain. And he's telling me the story just like cool as can be. And he's like, I think I like the Army. I'm going to stay in. Which is crazy because I had another friend. God, I love this guy. He was a Muslim dude. He was an infantry guy. Same experience. Goes up to, and he had a Ranger tab. This is my friend Rooney. So he goes up to division. They kick him out on a tasker, and he spoke. Well, he's from Afghanistan. His family's from Afghanistan, so he spoke the language.
Yeah.
Same experience. He's explaining to me what happened, and as he's explaining it to me, breaks out in a sweat, and he's just like shaking. Didn't kill a bunch of bad guys. So you never know.
Right.
That's the thing. People set up these schools, these badges, they don't really mean anything.
Yeah.
Because once you get over in combat, you don't know how you're going to react.
Yeah.
So
it takes a special kind of sociopath to have the experience of your first friend.
Yeah. I mean, sociopath is such a negative word.
Is it really, though? I mean, maybe you're just a great soldier.
We talked about this. I mean, I feel like we have. Maybe we didn't. But there are some people who just have a higher threshold of, like, for me, I'm so bored day-to-day life. I'm terminally, painfully bored.
Yeah.
I want chaos. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And I can't get it.
Right.
And it's like, it's like stand-up was a little bit of chaos for me, and then sometimes it's so boring to me.
Right.
And so it's like I'm trying to find, you know what I mean? And so I don't know, some people just do better in unstructured, chaotic situations. It makes their internal structure come alive, and they're just very organized and go through and systematically waste people, you know, or whatever the case may be,
bad guys,
whatever it could be, you know. And but I just thought it was so interesting the way guys respond.
So he was an automatic legend within like immediately.
Yeah, he came back, and these guys are like, go to the Q course. The Q course is the selection course for special forces. Go to the Q course, do this. They were like, you got to get this guy in. Because, like, I was never in a situation that intense, but, like, when you handle yourself well in those types of situations, then people really know you.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, it's like, it's not at all like stand-up, but in the way of, like, I just saw this guy murder. You got to see this guy.
Well, you know, and
except that's literal murder, but you know.
Well, I mean, I think we already addressed it. It's not, you know.
Well, no, you know what I mean by that.
Sanctioned killing.
Yes, that's what I mean.
It's totally legit.
Yeah.
It is 100% legit.
Yeah.
It's just it's wild talking to a guy like you, who, I mean, now you're a very successful doctor, but these are the kinds of experiences you were having back then. And and I know that was just the early days of your military career.
Yeah.
How many times did you deploy?
I'm not sure. I went because I was in a unit that would go back and forth from the Philippines a lot.
Okay.
So I guess technically I had maybe 2 big deployments, and then multiple, you'd probably call them TDYs, like temporary duties, where I'd go to a spot in the Philippines for like a month, do stuff, and then come back.
Wow.
So and that was, I don't know, like 20. I don't know.
That's
crazy. Go back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you had a very chaotic life.
Yeah, it didn't really feel chaotic. You know, when it feels chaotic at the time, you're kind of like, I guess, like flow. You know, you're going doing something like, oh, you know, your pager goes off. You're leaving in less than 24 hours, and then you're on a ship somewhere off the coast of Japan, and it's like, and it's exciting, you know, because every day is different, you know. But then years later, when it all ends, and you're an unemployed veteran living in your parents' house, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Who were those people? What?
Yeah.
What happened to that guy? You know? And that's wild, you know, and just like unpacking that stuff is pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, because the experiences, I mean, just the limited stuff that you've shared with me, it's so sketchy, dude.
Yeah, well, the intel world is sketchy.
Yeah.
And you know, because you gotta imagine that, like, when you're out doing stuff, we have, you know, guys out there, you know, counter intel guys that are spying on other people. But then you have force protection guys spying on you, you know? And so you meet people, and I think I told you this. I thought for the longest time you must be an informant or some kind of handler because you have that vibe about you. And I always assume when I meet people that they may not be who they say they are.
Right.
You know, I still think that.
Yeah.
Just like I still, when I go to my car, I look around, make sure nobody's around my car before I get in. And then I get in, buckle up, drive off as fast as I can. You know, it's just that thing.
It's like ingrained behavior for you.
I think so, a little bit, yeah. And honestly, I'll go years without thinking about this stuff, but yeah, it's wild. I mean, I was we had like a layover in Manila one time or something. Like we had to go to Manila for some reason, and we couldn't fly out until the next Monday.
This is while you were still in the military?
This is when I was in the military. Okay. And I just remember like a month later, I was on the Blue Ridge, which is like a command and control ship for 7th Fleet off the coast of Japan. And they're underway. I mean, and this Navy lieutenant walked up to me and he goes, "Hey, are you Jeremy Jonas?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Hey, when you were in Manila, you went out to lunch with a girl named Anna." I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "Did you have fun?" I'm like, "Yeah, it was nice." He's like, "Cool. Nice to meet you." And he walked off, and I thought, that guy was totally just telling me that to let me know that they're watching me, you know? So it's like, you know, you meet people in Tel Aviv, Sharm el-Sheikh, you know, Singapore, you know, a California pizza kitchen, some guy starts chatting you up and you're like, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, I know what you're doing, and that's fine. And whatever I tell you is whatever I'm told to make you think what we want you to think. So,
well, it's like this sense of always being watched.
Yeah.
Because of what you've experienced.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had some very strange experiences too, where it's just like, you never really know what's real and what's manufactured.
Correct.
In those types of scenarios, right?
Yeah.
You know, whether it's an intelligence agency or, you know, in my experience, it was more like organized crime stuff.
I was going to ask you that. Do you talk about that publicly? Because I know some things about you.
Yeah, I mean, I have.
Yeah.
Very ambiguously, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when I was up in New England, I was affiliated with some organizations up there.
Sure.
That a lot of people know about. While I was not necessarily in those organizations, I was very close to people that were.
Which means you were vetted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'd been scoped out. They'd watched me plenty. Dude, I will never forget, and I'm gonna put it in like, once again, kind of ambiguous, vague terms here, because it is kind of, I was gonna go pick something up from a guy, and this was my first time picking this particular product up from this particular dude. Right? We'd met through a friend. We were introduced. I know he did a bunch of research on me. I did a bunch of research on him too. Right? Because these are illegal products that we're talking about, and he told me that I was gonna meet him up in Rhode Island, right? Now, at the time, I was living in Massachusetts, so I drive over to Rhode Island. He tells me the place that I'm supposed to meet him. It was a Starbucks. So I park in the Starbucks parking lot. I go in, and as I'm walking in, I notice a guy like walking down the sidewalk, kind of behind me a little bit.
Yeah.
And when I went in, he walked around the corner and just kept going. But I was like, I think that guy was following me.
Yeah.
So I go into the Starbucks. I'm sitting there. He calls me. He was like, you're in the Starbucks, right? And I was like, yes, I'm in the Starbucks. He was like, okay, I want you to go back to your car and drive over to this other place. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I get back in my car. I still see that guy that had been walking down the sidewalk behind me, like a half a block down. I was like, okay, he was like just kind of scoping me out. So go back to my car, drive to another parking lot. And as I'm driving to that parking lot, I see two separate cars that were clearly like following me.
Right.
Right. I get to the parking lot. Well, actually, before I even get to the parking lot, he calls me again and reroutes me again.
Yeah.
And then finally, we met up. We made this exchange. But I mean, that kind of stuff happens all the time in that world.
Right. Right. Yeah. And there's the element of unpredictability, like for security, and one of the things that I used to do is we would have to go from from Zamboanga to Basilan or something. And, for some reason we'd have to go commercial, right? Or from Zamboanga to Manila, and we'd have to go commercial. And I'd meet the guy, Joe, in the barong at the soccer fields. And I'm not allowed to write his name and the time. It's like, you can't write it down. Somebody just comes and tells you, hey, you need to go meet this guy. So I go and meet the guy. And he's explaining to me how I'm going to get my weapons through the airport, right?
Okay.
So he's telling me, you're going to get to the airport, you're going to see this guy, he's going to introduce himself as this, you and your guys are going to go outside to this special room in the airport, give them your weapons, and then when you get off the flight, they're going to let you get off first, they're going to give you the weapons on the tarmac, and an armored car is going to pick you up. So it's like, who is this guy? Well, he's CIA. I mean, but like at the time, it's hard to piece this stuff together, And then, the guys in the trailer who are picking up like, hey, don't go here because there's a sniper on the rooftop. They're setting up. So we're not going to go there now because, we got these guys in the trailer listening to, everybody's messages. So yeah, it's weird stuff. And,
How did you get into that whole world? I mean, from going to West Point, being an Army infantry guy,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the path for everyone, obviously.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in that world?
The Army has a way, and I think the government has a way of like sort of picking people who can like work through problems and get things done and that they feel can be trusted. And I think that's kind of what happened. I mean, part of my thing is I was in an infantry unit, did the regular stuff, got made an executive officer in an infantry company. The commander liked me a lot because of just different things that would happen when we were in Egypt. And then basically, it's kind of funny. I was on a training exercise. I was like refilling a truck or like supplying with ammo, loading up crates of ammo in a truck. And this guy's like, "Hey, are you excited about your new job?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "What do you mean?" Because he was making small talk. I'm like, I'm going to be like a battalion staff. That's terrible. I don't want to do that. He's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't get in the Army to be a staff officer." And so then he called me up like 2 weeks later, and he's like, "Hey, there's a special operations unit, and they need somebody." And this was creepy. He's like, the general needs somebody to do security in the Philippines, and the only requirement was to be infantry airborne ranger qualified. And so they told me that over the phone. And then I went to a house party like that weekend, and this is crazy. I was in the North Shore, and this guy shows up with like 2 good-looking girls. And everyone was like, "Who is that dude?" None of us knew. The guy walks up to me and goes, "Hey, my name's Matt." I'm like, "Hey, Matt." And he goes, "I heard you're applying for that job."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You should take that job.
That's
if you
interesting.
if they offer you the job, you should take that job."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay."
Yeah, the guy with 2 baddies on his arm. Yeah, I'm gonna do that job.
Yeah. And then he's like, "I was in that job, but now I'm leaving. I'm going to this other unit." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I went and applied for the job. The crazy thing is I went for the job, and they put me on the phone with the general who was in the Philippines. And he said, "If you had to decide right now what you're going to do with your life, what would you do?" And I said, "I'd get out of the Army." And then he's like, "Okay." It was a short interview. And I was like, well, I just ruined it. But being honest,
Yeah.
I was like, I thought about going special forces, but if I had to choose right now, I'd get out. And then they called me back, said I had the job.
That's crazy.
And they
dude.
fly me to Guam, where I met the general. And one of the hostages was coming through Guam. Marsha Burnham was coming out of Guam. Her husband was just killed. Anyway, and he says, "Yeah, the reason I hired you is because I got out of the Air Force after 5 years, and then I got back in, and I thought maybe I could show you some stuff and change your mind."
Oh, interesting. I thought maybe it was one of those situations where, he doesn't want it, so now we want him to have it.
Well, that was crazy too, because what happens after I definitely decided I was going to get out, it's like my value in that unit went up. It was crazy because we got this general that came in that was from JSOC. You know JSOC?
I'm not.
So JSOC's the command and control of like Delta Dev Group.
Okay.
So SEAL Team 6, Delta, but they call them CAG and Development Group. So we got the deputy JSOC commander. He came over and he took over, and he was just like, he was really disappointed when he met me. He was like, "You're getting out. Like, why are they giving me this guy who's getting out?" And then he would ask me like stuff like, "How's morale in the unit?" I'm like, "Sucks." "Why?" "They think you're an asshole." He's like, "What?" And I'm like, "I'm telling you how it is, man." And but that became a thing where it's like he only wanted me to tell him what was going on, because he was an asshole and nobody he's the guy who's responsible for Roberts Ridge when the SEAL fell out of. So a SEAL fell out of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was part of Operation Anaconda, right? Yeah, dude. My buddy Kenny was part of that operation. Yeah.
Yeah. So people hated him for that, because what happened was a SEAL fell out of a helicopter. He was fighting against, I guess, Al-Qaeda fighters. They brought a Chinook in. The Chinook got shot down. It's full of Rangers who were on the Quick Reaction Force. And then basically my general, Greg Trebone, made the call to not send any more troops. So a bunch of those dudes just bled to death overnight. And he didn't send rescue until the morning. But he was thinking like Mogadishu, Somalia style.
Yeah.
Like he was
Black
afraid
Hawk Down type stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
Uh-huh.
You know your military skirmishes.
I mean, I know my movies.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Yeah. So anyway, this guy comes to the unit. I mean, he's just brash. I mean, and he, I legit to his face called him an asshole. And then there was a moment where he just paused and then he looked at me and he just started laughing. He goes, I am an asshole. And then from then on, it was like, oh, shit. Because even after I was done being his aide, they moved me to operations. And he just kept bringing me back. He was like, we're going over here. We're setting up this thing. And he's like, you're going to go with us. I'm like, why?
I don't work for you, bro. Yeah. But I mean, like, that's got to be so valuable in a position like his where he needs like truth, good intel, like honest opinions. Yeah. And he's not going to get it from a lot of people who are trying to kiss ass. And he's already got that established with you. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
It kind of backfired, you know? Yeah, my lack of professionalism kind of backfired. So, yeah, we did. His big thing was he was trying to set up these the big thing in the military at the time, and I think still is ops intel fusion cells. And so they have these little cells. You get like a – so this is kind of – this a little bit's talking out of my ass. But So generally you have like an operator, like somebody who kicks down doors and shoots, and then you have an intel guy who's sitting away somewhere like feeding him the intel.
Right.
So they put these two guys together, and it's very powerful. And what he was trying to do is to set up a guy from like a tier 1 asset, so like a Delta, you know, or as they call it, like a CAG, Combat Action Group, you know, a SEAL Team 6 guy with somebody who's like Army of Virginia, or they call them Orange. And that's kind of sketchy because that's kind of stuff where like those guys are my understanding, and I'm not really in that world. We just intersect a little bit. My understanding is those guys are like the NSA, but Department of Defense. So these are guys that go, you know, undetected intel guys, you know, gathering human intelligence, right? And probably other things.
Sure.
So I spent weeks with these guys that had cover names, you know, and it was like the most basic fake Irish name, like Mike O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Like looking at this guy like, oh, really? You're Irish? You know, like, and it was so creepy because even one of our guys pulled me aside before. He brought me into a skiff and he read me into the program, and he said, these guys that you're traveling with are different. They will spy on you. When you're not in your hotel room, they're going to go into your hotel room and they're going to search through your things, right? So he gave me don't ever write down dates and names, or, you know, dates and times. Like, don't write anything down, because they are actively looking for anything they think will compromise them.
Right.
So I spent 2 weeks with these guys traveling around the world trying to set up these little cells that some would argue might potentially be threats to other countries' sovereignty, right? So you have a high-value target coming through a region. We see an opportunity to act. Somebody just goes and legally murders them.
Oh, no way, dude.
So we were setting those up, and honestly, the you know, when talking about like compromising what we were doing, the general was the biggest problem, because we'd get in a hotel, you know, and we'd check in, and we'd go down and nobody's around, and we had a guy with us that would sweep the area, make sure there were no bugs, and I carried equipment that would like encrypt all of our phone calls and email communications. But, you know, we're talking, and it's clear that one of the guys from Virginia, you know, all the guys are from Virginia. All the secret squirrels are from Virginia.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school? Virginia. Where do you live? Virginia.
Not Quantico, though, right?
No, they just
Definitely
say Virginia.
not that.
They just say Virginia, yeah. So anyway, we're hanging in, and it's clear that the general and this guy were involved in Afghanistan together, and then he just starts using his real name, which I still remember. I wish I could get this guy's name out of my head, and I'm not going to say it because he's like Beetlejuice. But he said this guy's real name, and this guy just goes, he looks directly at me like, motherfucker, you know my real name now, you know? And I was like, I'm not going to tell anybody, you know? But yeah, it was weird.
That's fucking bonkers, dude.
It is bonkers.
Like, that's actually what's happening, and we have no idea.
Well,
like how
there's factions at work that are I went to this meeting in the embassy one time where we get in the embassy, and it's the general and the ambassador, and they walk up, and the ambassador says, "So, what did you want to talk to me about today?" And the general goes, "I was told that you wanted to talk to me." And then they just stare at each other awkwardly. And then he looks at me and he goes, "Who's this guy?" And the general called me muscle and heat, which I found kind of weird and offensive. He's like, "He's just muscle and heat." I'm like, "Thanks," And then he said, "Excuse us," which is the only time I've ever been excused because I had the highest level of clearance.
Right.
And they went into a room and then they, hashed stuff out. But it was like I was in armored cars leaving embassies, getting a report that the intel community from the State Department was turning their assets towards us, meaning they were now spying on us because of what the general was proposing.
To the ambassador.
Yeah.
What?
To the embassy, yeah.
So, I mean, that's got to be, just really confusing at the very least, but scary as shit at the worst because now all of a sudden you find yourself on the other side a little bit.
It was just weird. It's just like kind of like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like even our own people don't want us to do this, you know? And then, And then there were times, and the general thing was kind of, the interesting thing about that was that general was a little half-cocked. Like he came back, he had some issues, so that was another element. Where the general was a little bit unstable.
Yeah.
Like we had because what would happen is we'd fly somewhere and we would have to meet somebody in the embassy like on a Monday, but we'd get there like on a, Friday night. Mm-hmm. So we'd have like a week. So I had like a weekend in Bangkok, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Lady boys.
So yeah.
All right.
Very nice. So this general who's like 6'7", silver hair, and is convinced everybody's trying to assassinate him. That's a whole other thing.
Really?
Right? Yes. He's convinced everybody's trying to assassinate him. So I'm like got to be with him at all times, right? And I'm usually armed. And so he wants to go to a tailor because he wants to get these suits like made out of silk or some shit, So we're walking around this shop in Bangkok. It's busy as hell. There's a ton of people there. And the guy starts saying, "Yeah, there was a convoy." I'm like, "I don't know what he's talking about." He's like, "There's a convoy going. I got intel. They said it was so-and-so." He's like, I ordered fire support. So I took out the whole convoy. And at this point, he's like having a breakdown. He sits down and starts crying.
What?
6'7" general, silver, stands out in Thailand, right? And I'm looking around and I'm like, "Hey, sir, this is not a good place to do this."
Yeah.
I was like, "Sir, we got it." He's like, "Come on, let's go back to the hotel. This is not a good place. You're drawing a lot of attention to yourself." So, and then he would have these things where, because when we weren't deployed, I was basically like his secretary.
Yeah.
Like I would show up early. I'd read all the intel reports. I'd brief him on the way to his briefing with the 4-star admiral, commander of the Pacific. But then a lot of times I was just sitting outside of his office answering the phone. So I get this phone call and I'm like, "Hey, sir, it's your wife." He's like, "Tell her I'm busy." And I was like, "He's not busy." So I get on the phone. I'm like, "Hey, he says he's busy." "Okay. Hey, sir, she says she wants to know when she's going to be allowed to come up, move to Hawaii so she can be with you." And he's like a long pause. He goes, "Well, ask her if she's ready to start acting like a grown-up and take accountability for her decisions." And I'm like, "Oh, God." And I'm going back and I'm on the phone. I'm like sweating. I'm like, "Oh, my God, dude, put me in combat. I don't want to do this." I'm like, "Ma'am, he said that, he just wanted to know if you're ready to move up." And then she's like, "Well, tell him it's really his decision. He's the one." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I don't want to do this." And I would just go back and forth.
So now you're just a marriage counselor.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. But no, he
should be like, "He said you're all good. Come on up."
Well, that's the other thing. He was lying to the people on base. He lived on Hickam Air Base, and he told them that his whole family was coming up. So they put him in this baller house, but he was by himself. And
It's actually a pretty good little trick, though.
Yeah, nice little trick, I guess.
Get a whole house to yourself.
Yeah.
That's designed for an entire family.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
When you said
kind of a hack.
when you said 6'7" with silver hair, I don't know why I'm picturing M. Bison from Street Fighter out there.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. I haven't seen
wow. That's
that.
a deep cut, Josh.
Yeah, you might have to bring that one up.
That's kind of accurate. Yeah.
You might have to bring that up. But yeah, no, the very first time I picked him up.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit. He's a little more svelte, though, a little more slender.
Your guy?
Yeah, he's built like a praying mantis.
Oh, all right.
But yeah, there was somehow his name when he was in JSOC leaked to the press, and there was a colonel in the Philippines who was assassinated. So he got in his head that they were going to try to assassinate him. So he wanted me. This was his big plan. He wanted me to wear his uniform when we went to the Philippines and tell everybody I was the general and he was the aide. I'm like 25 at this point. He's like 55. You know what I mean? And plus, the obvious problem that I had already been there. The first general I worked for was awesome. I'd already been in and out of the Philippines for like a year. They all knew me.
Yeah.
So it was just going to be insulting. Plus, the whole thing was like, we had security. I had a security plan. I had ODA guys to reinforce, like SF, operators when we go in and out of places. But his whole plan was just to dangle me out there like bait. Like I get shot and then he jumps out, ha
He
you
holds
fucking
you from,
idiot.
He holds you from the back of the neck. Oh,
you fool. We were going to get rid of him anyway. You just got a worthless captain.
you wanted to quit.
Yeah. Dude, he wanted you to be his stunt double.
It was crazy.
But for assassination attempts.
Yeah. So we didn't. So I convinced him like the uniform thing. I said, that's just going to be insulting because our counterparts are going to, so then the other thing was, so when we check into hotels, we would check in literally General Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a general and he was a captain. So they put me in a sweet room.
They
put me in a great
dope.
room. Yeah.
Wait, he didn't make you switch the rooms?
Well, no, because he thought, if somebody comes in, they're going to, right. And so, and then one day he came into my room and he saw that I had this big bowl of like papayas and mangoes. And he's like, why do you have that there? I was like, I don't know. They just put that in the room every day. It's great. And he goes, don't you think that was probably for me? And I said, oh, yeah, right, because it says General Jones. They're probably kissing my... And then he's like, well, you should give them to me then. You should have told me you should give them to me. I'm like, but how do I know they're not poisoned?
Oh, smart, dude.
And that he was like, yeah, good point.
That's a really...
Carry on.
You know what? I mean, the way that you could take advantage of a guy that's as paranoid as that, I mean, brilliant move on your part.
Yeah. He was nuts, man.
I mean, but was the paranoia justified, though? I mean, knowing now what was going on back then, I mean, Here's the thing. It got irrational because, like, when we were deployed and doing stuff, I mean, be cautious. And we are anyway. Right.
But like it was so bad that like when I first picked him up at his house, like the first weekend he was there, we were on an Air Force base. We were on Hickam Air Force Base.
Yeah.
I'm driving in my Jeep, okay? We come up, we're behind a car, and there's like a T intersection, right? Or it wasn't even an intersection, like the road split.
Yeah.
And the driver clearly just, it's probably a housewife, military spouse. She just didn't know where to go, so she slowed down, stopped in front of us. This guy braced himself and told me to ram her. He said, ram her, ram it. Or he didn't say her. He said, ram it. And I just pulled over, stopped, put it in park. I was like, sir, we're in Hawaii on an Air Force base.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ram that military dependent. She's got military tags, dude. And he's just like, in this situation, when a vehicle stops suddenly in front of you, it's an ambush. You aim for the rear axle, you put on, and you knock them out of the way, and you keep going. I'm like, yes, but again, we're in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Mele kalikimaka. It's like
on base.
We're
dude.
on base.
But
we would get in the car. Like I'd pick him up outside of his house. He'd get in the car. I'd be wait there for like 30 minutes, and then he would sprint from his house to the car, and then go, 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 and I'm like, getting in the car, putting my seatbelt on. I'm like, okay. And he's like, the red dot's on me. It's not on you. And me and the other dudes in the car were like, this guy's fucking nuts.
Yeah. That's the thing, bro. Like, I wonder what this guy saw that made him that paranoid at all times.
Well, so he was in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
You think it was just a lot of PTSD on his part?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, a lot of dudes getting shot up. I mean, there was like, and this happened a long time ago, but there was a guy who worked in the embassy, a Colonel Nick Rowe, who was assassinated by New People's Army agents, you know? And so, I mean, that kind of paranoia, I mean, it makes sense when you go to these places, right? It's just wild to be on base.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's still the mentality.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, dude. Like, if you have to live like that, if that's how you have to be at all times, I'd rather just acknowledge, yeah, there's a risk, but I'm still going to live my life, and I'm not going to be in constant fear and paranoia at all times.
Yeah.
But granted, PTSD, you can't really account for that.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I think probably part of it was he came from like a tier 1 level place, right? Where he's got the best operators in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then my unit was kind of like what they call white soft. So there's like, it's special operations, but it's not the tier 1 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they still answer to like Secretary of Defense, but it's not, you know, so I think there was a little bit of like, oh, you know, small time cop mentality. Like, oh, I can't trust these guys. You know, they haven't been in, you know, the units that I've been in.
Yeah.
His whole, like, I saw his DD 214 or actually, I guess they call it like his officer eval report or whatever. Every unit this guy's been in's been blacked out.
Wow.
You know, but it was mostly because he developed. Oh, I probably shouldn't say this. That's probably too far.
Okay.
But he developed something that is still used, and so he was in like a lot of experimental units.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is also interesting because his attitude and his bravado was like he was a door kicker.
Yeah.
You know, but the reality is he's not. He's a pilot.
Okay.
He's not an operations guy. I'm not an operations guy, but I'm more of an operations guy than he is.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like in that unit, not an operator. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, it's weird, man.
So maybe some of the paranoia was justified, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's not know your audience, but know your environment. You know?
Yeah, and he was yeah, he was just kind of I think a weirdo. You know, I didn't talk about it for a long time because I was like, weirdly, just by a huge coincidence, I was like best friends with his nephew, which was just a weird coincidence.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you actually had a connection to his relatives as well.
Yeah, which was weird because this guy that lived in my apartment building, I just see him out surfing all the time with his, you know, he's hanging out on the beach with his girlfriend. We lived next to each other. We'd cook dinner for each other. We'd surf. You know, hang out all the time. With Chappelle's show. Yeah. Turns out it's his nephew.
Do you think that was an accident, or do you think that he was maybe a plant in your life?
I don't think it was a plant because that dude is not somebody who'd be planted.
Okay.
Then he was good.
Yeah. Great point, Josh. Yeah, he might have just been really good.
He might have been really, really good, but I don't think so. I think it was, because.
I mean, do you think that you still deal with some of that? Obviously, not to that extreme, but the paranoia that this general was experiencing, you know, on a day-to-day basis, in country and out of country. I mean, do you still think that you feel some of that just because of what you've experienced? I mean, what you were describing earlier, checking around your car, get the seatbelt on, get out of there as fast as possible. I mean, that's like fairly minimal type stuff, but.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the first couple years out, it was kind of overwhelming. You know, I wouldn't say it's overwhelming because it wouldn't happen all the time. But it was enough so that like when I started dating somebody, I'd have to kind of be like, hey, by the way, you know, if we're in a crowded place, I might just have to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And hopefully they were cool about it, you
Yeah.
know? And when I met my wife, I mean, I basically had this box full of like order sets, you know, like order sets, like you'd get orders to go someplace and everything would be redacted, you know? And I'd be like, this kind of stuff is still on my mind a lot, so I just need to tell you because it was a big part of my life, and I'm, you know, kind of, you know, sorting through it. So I don't know so much anymore. I mean, to me, some of the stuff is just good habits.
Sure.
I mean, situational awareness, knowing who you're talking to, and, you know, not telling people more than they need to know.
Right. Being able to evaluate the people around you.
Right.
Maybe see through a little bit of the bullshit sometimes.
Right, right.
You know?
Yeah.
Makes you maybe a little bit, I don't know, pragmatic. Let's just say very pragmatic at times. But I think I think those are valuable qualities to have.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was never like in a real like gunfight. Like, I never had to shoot any. I mean, I pulled my weapon out a couple times and pointed it at people, but I never had to shoot anybody. Nobody really shot at me. You know, the bombs that went off, you know, in our area, all happened when I wasn't in town.
Yeah.
Suspiciously. Yeah. So, so I don't think I had PTSD that way.
Yeah.
But I had this issue, which I've kind of talked about on stage a little bit, but I would wake up extremely aggressive to the point where, like, even when my friends would come visit, I'd have to kind of like warn them, like, don't, you know, and I'd lock the door so they don't accidentally walk into my room.
Yeah.
So I had a roommate in medical school who, good dude. He lives here in Austin, and one night. We lived together in like a little townhome, 2-bedroom place. And one night he came home. I'd already gone to sleep. He had a couple beers. Something had happened with one of our friends. He thought it was funny. And he just walked into my room to tell me that. And I was totally out of it. And apparently I jumped out of bed, like barking, I guess, and just chased him. And I don't really remember it. What I remember is like banging on his door to get in, and he's like, "It's me, it's me, it's me." And I'm like, and then I just was like, "Oh, sorry," you know, because apparently I jumped out of bed, chased him, like screaming, you know, like you know, I don't even know, like, and he like ran to his room, shut the door, and was like trying to
barricaded himself in his room to protect himself from you. I mean,
that wasn't the only time that happened.
Really?
Well, with him it was, but it happened with another friend that came to visit. And
did you ever do that with women? Might be kind of hot.
I told the story on a set during a weekend. I apparently headbutted somebody. But she was fine. She had a thick forehead. So
good. Okay.
But I don't even remember it all. I don't remember it all. I woke up and she was very upset, and I was like. She's like, you woke up, you looked at me, and then you headbutted me. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Sounds like she might have had it coming a little bit.
I don't know.
That's an interesting aggressive move, though.
That's not a go-to move for me.
Yeah, well,
I'm not a big headbutt because I'm too tall, you know? My headbutt the top
Maybe you just saw your
head.
opportunity and took it, you know?
Maybe so. Maybe so.
You know, I accidentally headbutted a lady one time.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was fighting with me in my car. She was attacking me in my car. What was happening? Yeah, and I swung my head around to tell her to knock it off, and my head caught her in her head, and she was out cold.
Oh,
yeah, it was great. Like that was kind of scary, actually.
That
it was
scary.
Very scary
because now you've just
potentially. You know.
That happened to me on 6th Street. I was going up to random women and picking them up and going, bah, bah. I got 4 of them.
Sorry, I was asleep. I don't know what was happening.
The unbelievable part of that is that you could pick them up.
They were little. They were little.
Oh, no, these were college kids.
Yeah, they were tiny women.
That's hilarious. That's funny. You know what's so interesting? I had like kind of a similar thing for a little while where I couldn't, I don't know if I should censor this for YouTube or not. I couldn't have firearms. because I woke up one night sitting on the floor of my bedroom loading one.
Oh God!
Like woke up out of a dead sleep, and I'm sitting on the floor of my bedroom loading up a what do they call it? Wireless hole puncher, I think is how it's referred to. Yeah. And I was like, when I realized what was happening, and I'd done other stuff where I'd answered the door in my sleep because my friends would come over late at night after being at the bars, the clubs or whatever, and they'd want to come over to my place and crash or whatever, and I'd answer the door with a firearm. Yeah. Not really,
that's scary.
Not being fully cognizant, but when that happened, and I'm sitting on the floor of my bedroom, bullets out, just loading one up, I was like, oof, I probably should not have these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to comment on whether I have firearms specifically, but I will say, God, you got to be so careful. You know? Because I had, I mean, all of my friends were very heavily armed, and I, when I was in Hawaii, I was the one guy that didn't have, because I'm like, they give it to us, they issue, why am I going to carry it around in my free time, But then I was robbed.
In Hawaii?
Yeah, but I was not home. Like it was like midnight. We were having a house party. I lived basically in the garage of somebody's house. I was on the beach and I came back and I must have just missed them. But I saw like my lockbox was open and dumped out, and I was like, well, that's where my gun would be. So I was just thinking, like, if I had a gun and I had gotten home, like I'd walked in just a little bit, like that'd be a gun that somebody else had now.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's that thing where too, like I'm a notoriously bad sleeper. And, but for a while after that stuff, I would wake up. They call them hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations.
Okay.
I would hear the general talking to me. And I would wake up and be like, was I on the phone? No, I don't have any missed calls. Like, and then I, you know what I mean? I would just like be confused and like looking around and freaked out.
Yeah, dude.
Because it was like, who was that?
Who's talking to me right now?
Yeah.
That's kind of, oof.
But I think maybe that was a sleep and a stress thing.
Maybe you got MK Ultra'd though.
Maybe
it's possible.
A little bit.
Yeah, and they gave you a secret weapon, the headbutt. When you're activated.
Only use this on women who are somewhat interested in dating you.
I mean, some of the stuff that you experienced, especially in the Philippines, dude. I mean, what would you say was your, I guess, highest pressure situation over there for you personally, or maybe the scariest?
Yeah, I mean, probably like we would have little things that would come up where it was like, so the reason we were there is the Abu Sayyaf group was a terrorist group that was kind of little more than like a kidnapping gang. It was they were a separatist group because the Philippines, you have these little islands, they're not represented well by the central government. So you get all these like terrorists, but they're separatist groups. So anyway, this group started linked up with Al-Qaeda, which is what opened the door for us to get funding. They call it MFP 11 funds into special operations. So we went down there to try to basically kill everybody.
Okay.
Well, to aid and assist them to do it.
Yeah.
Because we weren't allowed to engage them directly. So anyway, with that being said, a big part of it was like winning the hearts and minds. So we go down there, and when I went down there, they had already been there for like 6 months. So they were pretty well established. But they'd say, hey, we're making progress, but there's this priest who's been saying some things, and he's got a large congregation. And so basically we sent engineers down there to start building roads and start building water wells and make their lives better to kind of help win their hearts and minds. Like, hey, no, we're the good guys, and we don't like those terrorist bad guys, you know? And so we're doing all that, and then we get this intel report one day that there's a priest down there, and he's talking a little smack. He's saying, hey, maybe the Americans aren't so great. Maybe we should, be kind to our Muslim brothers who are, doing this thing. So we got to plan a trip down there to talk to this guy. And so, what I would do is I'd coordinate, because I'm the close-in security guy, so I'm the guy right next to the general, And so I have an ODA team, who they're personnel security, and they're door kickers. I mean, for sure. These are the guys from the Cinque and Extremis Force. So special forces, the way they're arranged, they have like a battalion, they have a group, right, that covers a region, and then they have a battalion that's like the spearhead, like the guys who are at that moment the best war fighters, and you could go out and do stuff. So these are part of that group. So there's like 6 guys, right? But I still got to get there safely. So I coordinate with the SEALs, use their special boat guys. We're going to go over there on boat. Because if we use the helicopter, everybody will hear us coming.
Right.
Right?
And you don't want it to be some big deal.
And people, there's threats of people shooting things down with RPGs and that kind of stuff. So we go in a small boat. We get there, and there's a huge truck with a 50 cal mounted. And the guys, because I have my own ODA guys, but there's the guys on that island that were working. We coordinated with them. So we get there, we load up in the truck. So there's a big 50 cal in the front. I'm in an armored car with the general right behind it. And we start taking. Immediately, I hear a chainsaw. Tree falls down between the first truck and my truck.
Ooh.
And this is classic ambush.
Yeah.
But you're not hitting the rear axle of a tree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in an ambush, what you're supposed to do, does anybody know? In an ambush, you're supposed to get out of the car and charge where you think the threat is, right? That's what you're supposed to do in an ambush because you're sitting duck there.
Sure.
They wanted you trapped there so they can open fire and shoot on you. So the general was supposed to stay because it's an armored truck. So this tree falls down between us, and I jump out of the vehicle, and like within seconds, I'm in this dude's face with a gun, like pointing his face. Just
Whoa.
Yeah. And as far as I could tell, that whole thing, because what they do is they test things, right? So they don't just the bomb that goes off. It's not the first time they planted a bomb. They plant a decoy, and they want to see how you react to the decoy. And then once they see how you react, then they get their shit together.
So you think this guy was just sussing you out?
I think what he was doing, they wanted to see how we were going to react to it.
Yeah.
And because there was no follow-up attack, right? But like for that specific spot, for somebody to chainsaw a tree, right, in between the lead vehicle and the vehicle with a high-value target, I mean, there's no way
that's
that
a
was
little
chance.
coincidental, yeah.
I mean, it's like how many times in life does a tree get sawed down right in front of you, And so I think they were kind of just checking to see how we were going to react.
He went back and reported, there was this huge guy that jumped out of the car and headbutted me immediately.
Yeah. So that was probably the most sphincter tightening moment. But then the rest of that, little trip was pretty chill.
What happened with the priest? Did you get him on your side?
More or less.
Yeah?
Yeah, we went and ate a really shitty lunch. We went and met the guy, walked around his little shack. And
he stopped talking shit after that?
Well, it's hard to know for sure because what they'll do all the time is just like, oh, yes, The thing is, everybody there is somebody else's cousin. So you can't trust anybody.
Yeah. Because
you have a relationship with somebody or you say this, they turn around, they text their cousin who's on the other side, like, by the way, the Americans are coming, So like what I would do when I would go places is I would, if I had to go commercial, we had the thing where we move our guns through, but I would go to the airport and I would buy the tickets in person. I'd get the tickets and then we would just show up on a different day at a different time and be like, we want to fly now.
Yeah.
And they would usually let us. They would let us. And so the idea was somebody at that airport is going to tip somebody else off.
Right.
So I would buy tickets for the wrong date all the time, change the plans, never do the same route twice, that kind of stuff. It's just good operational security, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But it's one of those things you don't really think about in civilian life.
Yeah, you really shouldn't have to.
Right?
Right?
But
I mean, if you had to take a different route home every day.
Yeah, dude.
It's only so many routes you can take.
I mean, no wonder some of these intel guys that get out are so fucked up.
It's crazy because I have never met another guy from my unit that knew about any of that stuff until about 3 weeks ago. And it was a patient, and he came in, and he was like, yeah, he started telling me all this stuff. And I was like, well, what did you do? And he starts telling me. I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, I know what you're talking about. And anyway, it was wild because we knew all the same people, and we overlapped by like a year, but I might have met him, but I didn't remember him. But
no way.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Oh, they're still watching.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, he was like one of these guys that would do like low-level source ops, which is like probably the coolest job you could have, but also probably the most dangerous. So, and somebody like me, I can't do that in the Philippines. Yeah, I could only do that in like Norway, like because what these guys do is they go hang out in local places, do a little coke with the guys, party, and then they just sort of like hang out, and they do that for months, and then they start just picking up on the chatter, to kind of know what's going on. So in our unit, what happened was the low-level source ops guys got into a routine where they would stop and get food right before they crossed some base, and they didn't. So they set up that routine, and then they rotated out, and the new group that came in didn't realize that the other group had been doing that, stopped to eat, little tuk-tuk, little bike cab comes up, boom, explodes. Killed a guy, really hurt the other guy. But that's the kind of stuff. But that's low-level source guys. I didn't do that. But, yeah, but those guys.
So he was in the thick of it over in the Philippines at the same time you were?
Yeah, so he ended up operating like in Indonesia, and he was in the Philippines too. But he was there. I'm not sure he was in the Philippines when I was, but he was in my unit while I was there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy, dude.
It is crazy.
That you just randomly run into this guy. I think Josh is right. They're still watching.
Yeah.
They just want to see what you have to. We heard he's doing comedy now, and we can't be having him blabbing. So let's just plant another seed of paranoia there.
Yeah. Creepy stuff, man.
I think the whole like psyop approach and all of that, like what you were talking about with going in and building roads and win the hearts and minds.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about the black ops stuff that's being talked about here in the U.S., especially like special operations and special forces being involved in like the drug trade and that sort of thing? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my thought on that is that I would not ever want to talk about it.
Okay.
Because that would be so messy.
Yeah.
That would be so incredibly. So you probably understand how organized those groups are.
Yes.
These are not like low level. These are like CEO. Mm-hmm. If they hadn't gotten in a life of crime, they would be like, the CEO of Salesforce or something.
Right.
These are very, very talented people.
Yes.
In some ways, yeah, I just don't even want to touch that. I mean, I'll tell you this. I worked in an ICU in San Antonio, and we're a couple hours from the border. Mm-hmm. And there was an ICU nurse that worked there one day and then was not there the next. And they said that her dad became mayor of one of those little border towns.
Really?
And he, in his inauguration speech, said, "Well, we're gonna cut down on this trafficking. We're gonna go after the cartels." Murdered. Mm-hmm. Family goes to the funeral. Family murdered.
Wow, dude.
So, I mean, the level of violence from gangs, because San Antonio is a level 1 trauma center.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see those guys come in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did, and it's it's pretty bad.
Oh, it's dude, I don't think people really understand like how crazy it is unless you're witnessing it like you did firsthand.
Yeah.
I mean, down in the valley, Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, like all of that stuff is crazy. Still.
I used to, around probably 2004, I have a buddy who lives about an hour west of the border. So an hour west of Piedras Negras, a little town called Morelos. And I used to just pick up, drive over there, take me like 3 hours to get to his place. Even because my buddy, like, you can't get a hold of him. The way you get a hold of him, you drive to his place, you find him out on the property, like in a spring, And that's what I do. I drive out there, hang out for the weekend. Sometimes I'd see him, sometimes I wouldn't, Probably a couple years after that, I left San Antonio, and he called me one time and he said the Mexican army was camped out on his property because they were trying to, cut down on the traffickers. But the drug activity has gotten so bad that he was like, bro, yeah, you should not come over here anymore,
Really, dude?
Like 0405?
What's that?
0405?
Yeah. Well, that 0405 was when I would go down there. I think when he told me that was like 09, 2010, something like that. So I think that's kind of when it started to get real bad, but I don't know. But yeah, man, messy shit. I mean,
not being involved in it myself anymore. Like when I look at some of the stuff that's happening, especially in South America, I mean, it's hard not to make an educated guess that our government's involved in a lot of that.
Well, that's the thing. We're involved in everything.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big take-home lessons for me. It's like, whatever you're told is whatever you're fed. Like whatever, you know what I mean? That's not whatever message you receive is the one they wanted you to receive. And, God, part of this thing with Elon Musk going through, and part of the problem with these billions of dollars just, slipping through our hands like sand, it's sort of like, where does that money go and what's it being used for? Because there are some very industrious people, that are very close to the government that will find ways to do things. And so I don't know. I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat, but it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's weird what's going on right now, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think just like you said, we have the information that we're allowed to access.
Yeah.
But what's going on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
that we may never know about.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, right? Because, at some point they'll say, well, it's to protect our assets, because we have this, really robust intel system and we don't want them to know about our spy satellites and our spy planes and our spies on the ground. And it's like, yeah, but once you get comfortable lying about things, it just becomes a second nature, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because, I was involved in ops where it's like, okay, we were tracking this ship from North Korea all the way down through Singapore on its way to Iran, right? And we intervened somewhere in that route, along that route. And essentially, the news articles that came out was Spanish Navy, intercepts North Korean Scud missiles on the way to Iran. And it's like, oh, really? The Spanish Navy did that,
Yeah.
So great of the Spanish Navy, And so, you would hear all these stories all the time, and you're like, well, that's not what happened, but sure, But that's kind of like understandable. But, when all the shit came out with Edward Snowden, it's like, yeah, of course.
I was thinking that earlier when you were talking about like some of the paranoia and the skepticism. I mean, yeah, maybe some of it is unjustified, but then you hear the stuff like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, and you're just like, oh, well, maybe the paranoia is justified.
Well, that paranoia is against, the government itself. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You had guys that are supposedly on your side spying on you.
Right.
So what makes us think that they wouldn't be spying on us?
Oh, they are a ton. To me, it's like a no-brainer. It's like, okay, cool. You want to see like my fucking stand-up clips? Cool. Enjoy. Knock yourself out, man. Give me some feedback,
It's for your protection.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to hide, you're okay.
Yeah, of course, Josh. Yeah, obviously, this is all just theoretical. Yeah.
I don't know why when you said Spanish and Navy, I thought of the wooden ships, like the Pinta and Santa Maria.
It was the Santa Maria. It's still in their fleet. Yeah, they're the ones who intercepted. Yeah, a guy in the big fucking plume.
Right. Yeah. Muskets and shit. The conquistadors.
Yeah.
Intercepted the North Korean Scud missiles.
Yeah, that was them.
Well,
they did a great job.
I mean, I wanted to talk about like how you ended up getting into, your medical career, but I mean, we've been talking about this for a while now, so I think we'll have to reserve that for a part 2 because even the way that you went from this like in-depth intelligence guy, I mean, you were. What I kept thinking while you were telling me, some of your stories is you were playing chess out there. Like, you weren't kicking indoors, you weren't blowing guys up, but the stuff that you were doing, I mean, the amount of mental stress that must have put on you at all times. It's a good thing that you operate well in chaotic, high stress environments. Because I don't think most people would be able to maintain their sanity.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really enjoyed it at the time. It was really exciting. And then even afterwards, I think I kind of miss it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why you're so paranoid now.
I'm not that paranoid.
No, you're not paranoid at all. But you did think I was like some sort of
I kind of still
intelligence
do.
plan. What?
I still kind of think you're some like 21 Jump Street guy. That's like infiltrating the comedy community to bust like a drug ring.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
Hey, kids. He has his microphone over his shoulder. Hey, how you doing?
Dicks are funny, right? Hey, man, I wish I was getting paid to do this. That'd be amazing. But we can talk about that more too, because I've had some like run-ins with not just organized crime, but also like the intelligence community as well.
No, I remember you told me something about that.
Yeah, dude,
once.
that was crazy.
It's crazy, but it also totally makes sense.
It does,
that
right?
Somebody would try to recruit you for source ops.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's what it was, right?
I don't know. I didn't get far enough
that's what it was.
into the process.
Yeah.
You would probably know more than I.
Yeah,
what they were trying to do there.
I remember you telling me the story. It was basically somebody approached you and was like, "Hey, how about you try these things?"
Yeah,
it sounded like they were in the stages of like trying to vet you.
That's kind of what it felt like, and then it just got so weird that I was like, "I'm out. Like, I don't want anything to do with this."
Part of it too is like they don't. One of the things they want is they want dirt on you so they can control you.
You know my dirt's pretty public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's not a secret.
Man, you guys get cool people. I just get like witches and gurus and stuff. That's who.
Witches and gurus.
Yeah, that's who.
They're coming after you, Josh?
Yes.
Huh.
You're spending a lot of time in the spirit world.
Yes.
Yeah, goblins and ghouls.
Josh has some crazy stories too, man.
Yeah.
I've never had a woman like literally act like she was pregnant to try to get me to stay with her. Josh has had that happen.
Oh, that's
wore
right.
a fake belly and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, just insane. But regardless of what military, religious, I don't even know what yours would be. It's all a cult, dude. That's really all it is.
Las Flacas.
Las Flacas?
No,
Nice,
they're all fat.
Oh, no. Las
You found out
Tortas.
about the fake belly when he punched it and hurt his hand. It's like, what
Hey,
is
you
the
should have
thing
sent
made
Jeremy
of?
in on that one. If you'd known Jeremy, he would have just headbutted right in the belly. We'll
Like,
find
usually
out.
a fetus comes in when I do this.
Well, shit, Jeremy. Thank you for hanging out and telling us some of your stories. This is crazy stuff,
Yeah.
and we're definitely gonna have to do a part 2 now.
Hey, that'd be awesome. Man.
So that I can hear the rest of this stuff, because
Sure, man.
even with this conversation, I still learned a lot more than I'd ever known before. So this was kind
that's
of cool.
wild. Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, it was good to see you.
Absolutely, always good, man. Anywhere you want to tell people to find you online?
Well, Black Rabbit ATX.
Okay.
I'm the Jeremy Jonas on Instagram.
Producer Josh, anything you want to share?
April 11th, 12th, LOL with Matt McCusker. Get your tickets.
Oh, no way, dude.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Ping Trip, actually. I don't know if you know who Ping Trip is, Jeremy, but he wants to do a podcast episode with McCusker.
Okay.
So might need to set something up there. Well, cool, man. And online they can just search Joshua Cabaza, right?
Yeah. Google me.
Google Josh Cabaza.
Yeah.
You'll find him. Y'all, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out. We love you. See you next week. Bye.